This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello, my sweet friend. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. And I hope you're enjoying these last days of winter. Today, I have another surprise. Her name is Christy Yates. She's an amazing person, and she is the author of Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. She's an expert on how to prioritize self-care and mindfulness. And she's an expert in supporting caregiving families. She incorporates mindfulness along with other evidence-based practices to support wellness for the whole family. She is a school psychologist and she retired in 2021. So welcome, Christy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here, and I love talking about self-care.
So can you tell us how your journey started?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in 2015, I lost both my parents. They both had a form of dementia. My dad had vascular dementia, and my mom had Alzheimer's. At the same time, I was working full-time as a school psychologist. And I was also raising with my husband 2 kids who were by that time in high school. But go back about 4 or 5 years, and that's when I really started to help manage the care of my parents. Those 4 or 5 years, even longer, really, those were hard years because I was more and more involved in their care. And for the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years of their, I guess about 2.5 years, they were in assisted living, which was their choice. That's what they had wanted. But they both needed more care than anybody could provide in home. And I say that because they also had purchased an insurance plan that only paid for assisted living. So like I said, this was their choice. They had long ago decided that. But I have to tell you, I was not practicing great self-care during this time. It also fell at a time when I was premenopausal, and I had no idea because I was too busy to know. I was too busy to know why I felt crazy all the time. Like all of the things that women experience, or many of the things that women experience during perimenopause, things like weight gain, irritability, inability to sleep, so insomnia, night sweats, all of those things were happening for me. And I just thought I was anxious because of my parents. I thought, oh, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And I will say during that time, I did use the strategies that I knew. It was different little crises along the way that sort of catapulted me into being a self-care advocate, because I knew I had to take care of myself because I was going to let everybody down, right? I mean, I needed to take some space at times. I needed to say no at times that I didn't usually do that. You know, I was like, no, I'll do it. And I had to take a step back and say, I can't do everything. And I had to ask for help. That was a big one. I thought, oh no, I'm supposed to do everything. And I had to start asking for help. I had to rely on my husband a lot more. And God love him, he was fabulous. It wasn't even like, and that's the thing, is like, we always had this partnership, but I just kept thinking, well, I have to, because these are my parents. And he was always there to help. And I had to start pushing more things over to him so I could really be sane as much as possible. My children were wonderful. They were really helpful. But I could have done more. I could have asked for more help. I could have reached out and found professionals to help with certain things. And I wasn't aware of all of the things that I could have tapped into. So fast forward 2015, lost both my parents. It was really difficult, but also we did everything we could to make the end of their life as beautiful as possible. So I feel very good about that. I went back to work and people were coming out of the woodwork saying, "Hey, how did you handle this? How did you handle this?" And I realized we're not talking a lot about this time period where men and women who are parents are also then maybe caring for elders, and how that really can overwhelm us. And it's just a season, it's not forever. It doesn't take all of our life, but it's this time of life that can be really intense and difficult. And so I also started looking at self-care. What are the things we need to do to really bring wellness into our life? So when I talk to parents now about the sandwich generation being squeezed, I also talk about whole family wellness, because it's a prime opportunity for me to share some strategies, but also talk about how do you share those with your kids? Because if I had grown up with some really great strategies, maybe I would have leaned into them a lot earlier. You know what I mean? So that's where I see it, is being a conversation about whole family wellness. And so self-care is not selfish. It's very critical to our well-being, and learning how to do certain things differently and being more aware of our mind-body connection, I think, is something that can help all of us. And it's a great thing to teach our kids. So that's kind of where I come from.
That's awesome. You're talking about this like squad that you could have thought of having. So who, like, if someone were to ask you, like, who would you recommend these people to have in their squad?
Well, I really feel like if you are in that squeeze, is find a caregiver support group. There are, if your person you're caring for has dementia, then the Alzheimer's Association in your area will have free support groups available to you. But you can find many support groups if you just start, that's what you're Googling for, is like caregiving support groups. There are some online, there are some in your community. Reach out to if you have a faith practice, reach out to your faith group and find out if there are some. But I think finding a support group is really important, because talking to other people who are in your situation is a great way to A, realize you're not crazy, and B, learn some new things you may not have known, and opportunity to share some strategies. If you're raising kids, it's getting to know your children's friends enough and their parents, so that if you need to, get a carpool going because, oh my gosh, you just got called to the emergency room, but your kid's got to get to this event, you've got people you can call. So it's finding people you can reach out to. And I will say this, people love to help other people. I think we forget that in these days and these times. It feels like, oh, we're all isolated. But the truth is, very, very rarely did I reach out for help and have somebody say, "No, I can't help you." It might have been, "I can't do that right now, but I'd be happy to help next week," or something like that. But people want to help other people. And anytime anyone's asked me for help, I feel good. So why am I resistant to asking other people for help? Because it's a human thing. We want to do it. And the more we do that, then the more we kind of build that community, and we start to, our world starts to get bigger. And like you said, we start to have this squad, people we can depend on. And they don't have to be your best friends. They can be people, your neighbors. Why? Like a real simple thing might be, you can't leave the home right now because your child is sick, but you need something from the store. Are you going to call somebody who lives, 30 minutes away? Or are you going to maybe call a neighbor and say, "Hey, can you run up to the store and get this thing for me? I'll Venmo you the money." That's so much easier. Why put somebody who lives on the other side of town because you know them?
Yeah.
Reach out. People will help you.
Talking about that, my mom has had this horrible diarrhea for a few days now. And that's exactly like, hey, reach out to your neighbor and
Yeah.
ask them if they can stop by and get you your medication.
Right, right.
And they were really happy. And another friend that she lives very close by, she prepared food for her and brought it to her. I wouldn't have been able to do that for her.
Yeah.
Maybe Uber Eats, but then you're not getting the right food, right?
Right, right. No, people want to help. I mean, and they're willing to help. Now, you know, it's also learning how to ask. That's something that we don't always practice. And again, this is something I'm always thinking about. Okay, how is this not just about us, but also if we're raising children, this is a great skill to pass on to kids. And one of the things when we're thinking about asking for help is, ask somebody that you reasonably suspect can help you. You're probably not going to call your neighbor who has 10 kids and can't leave the house either, but there's probably somebody else you can call who, has the ability to go to the store. Those kinds of things. You want to be somewhat reasonable in who you ask, and then be very specific about what you need. I need some medication for diarrhea. I know they sell it at Rite Aid or CVS. And, if you could pick that up for me, I would really appreciate it. I can pay you back when you get here. That's what you start with. You don't start with the whole story. Sometimes we want to go into the whole thing of, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And we just need to get to the ask. We need to tell people that. And then if there's money involved, what if we needed somebody to lend us money for something? We have to be specific about what that is. And then we share our gratitude when someone reciprocates. And then we can also turn the favor back to let me know when I can help you. I would be happy to help you next time. So it's just a skill. We can be very resistant to asking for help. At least I was. And people I've met are the same way, like, oh, I hate asking for help. We all need help one way or the other. And so helping is a really great way. And I think that kind of thing, to be honest with you, Isabel, I feel like that's something that can heal our world too. I mean, the more we start to connect over these real world things and we lean into one another in a healthy way, wow, that's great.
Yeah, it is great. And you mentioned something that is very important, that how we feel very uncomfortable asking for anything. I did the ask. I connected with all authors and I was like, well, I need to interview. Well, I want to interview people for my podcast, and
Yeah.
I've met wonderful people and I have lined up several interviews. And all of you have been amazing and have shared a lot of knowledge and wonderful experiences. So yeah, when you ask for something, wonderful things happen.
I always bring it back to consider the last time somebody asked you for something or asked you for help. And how did that make you feel? Now, maybe you've had the experience with somebody who's always asking you for help, right? They always need something. And that might not always feel good. But think about those other times when somebody just needed your help and you were able to do it. It feels good. So asking someone else is also a way to allow them to feel good, to help you. So, yeah.
I think I'm going to make an ask for anything challenge.
It's true. That'd be great. Yeah. And like I said, I think it's one that it's a skill that you can learn. I have a YouTube channel with a few videos and I have an learning how to ask for help video on there. So it's just about the way you can step into that, because it is uncomfortable sometimes. And that's curious to me. It's sad that we are growing up feeling like we can't ask for help. And so that's why I still say this is a great thing to share with your kids, and helping them learn how to ask for help is a great skill teacher. So, yeah.
If you can share that, I'll be happy to put it in the show notes for everybody.
I'll send you a link for sure. Yeah. It's just, I'm on YouTube as @Christy Yates. So, just youtube.com/@Christy Yates. But yeah, it's on there and I will send you a link, Isabel.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I also wanted to ask you, like, if you were to go back, what would you change from the beginning? Like, from the moment that you learn that both your parents had dementia, what would you change in yourself to protect your well-being, your self-care, and also give the best version of yourself.
And I think it really is about self-care. I was able to go to my parents' doctor because they gave me permission to talk with their doctor. And I would have asked the medical group, okay, where can I get help? Who can help me with this? I've got this diagnosis now for my mom with Alzheimer's. They weren't necessarily giving me a lot of great resources, but I needed to ask for them. There you go. It's right back there to asking. And I would have looked more for professionals who could guide me in some of this. And I learned later about people like caregiving coaches and people who are geriatric case managers. I didn't even know that existed. And I could have really used that support because I didn't know all the resources out there. There are a lot of resources to help with people who are aging and or people who have specific conditions. And we, as the family members, we may not be the expert in that yet, but the time it takes for us to I didn't have time to go to medical school and become a neurologist to help my mother with her Alzheimer's, but there were people I could have leaned into. And eventually I did. I did eventually reach out to the Alzheimer's Association and I went to some support groups and it was really helpful because I needed to learn different things that I didn't know. And so I that's really what I would do is I would look for where are the resources in my community that can support me in making sure my parents get the kind of care they need. And I think our doctors, our physicians, they're very much in the mode of medicine and treating those conditions. That physician is not necessarily a case manager, somebody who knows about all the community resources. And you have to look for that. That's one thing I think I would love to see change in our healthcare system is that people who get diagnosed with certain kinds of conditions, certainly any form of dementia, there's going to be long-term care there. So, wow, let's offer some wraparound services to help those families with that. And that's what I could have really benefited from.
It also falls into asking, but because even if you would have asked the doctor, hey, where can I find help about this? Maybe they don't know everything, but they can direct you to the right person. I think it was in the Daughterhood podcast that I heard this. Like, you need to ask the right questions.
Yes.
You need to ask. People don't know what you know or you don't. So
Well, exactly. And it was interesting when my father, he broke his hip and he had to go into the hospital and have surgery. He had vascular dementia. He had had a stroke when he was younger, when he was in his 60s, and then he had a series of mini strokes, TIAs. And so he didn't have the same kind of dementia my mother did. He wasn't forgetting our conversation, but he just couldn't really stay active in a conversation the way he used to. He was a little slower to maybe understand what we were talking about, or it was just too hard for him to really concentrate the way he did when he was much younger. And he was a very witty man. So that sort of was different for him. At any rate, he was not going to be able to go back to the assisted living where they were living because he needed too much care. So the nurses there were like, look, let me get you in touch with this person. We have a person who helps people find housing. And that was phenomenal. Like, I wish I had met this woman 2 years earlier when we were thinking about, oh, maybe it's time for my parents to move out of their house, because she really helped me to find different places that had different kinds of services. And then we were able to find a really great fit for them. And it was perfect and it was great. And they were at that facility till the end of their lives and they were wonderful. I didn't know that there was a person who did that. I mean, I thought we were supposed to all do this on our own. That's the whole thing. And I was busy, Isabel. That's the thing, is I was raising my kids and I was working full time. I also did not have time to I'm like really at midnight, everybody's in bed. I'm finally, Googling, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? And so, yeah, when we're super busy like that, we don't always have time to reinvent the wheel and figure everything out. So one, I do believe we need to learn to ask for things. I also would love to see the healthcare communities start to be proactive and offer some of these things. You get a diagnosis like Alzheimer's. Wow, let's connect you with somebody right away who can help you with looking at all the things,
And I'm just thinking about doing that myself and offering the resources for everybody.
In 2021, I wrote a book over between 2017 and 2021. I wrote the book that I wished I'd had, and it's called Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. And that's the book that's part of the ALS Authors Library. So that's how they found me. And I wrote about the things that I learned in my journey and things I wished I had known. And I also weave in the whole piece about how did giving care to my parents impact me as a parent to my own children, because that's something that I didn't see a lot of. And I still don't. That's like a conversation that I'm putting out there in the world, because I think we oftentimes focus a lot on what we need to give to our older person or elder or spouse who is dealing with something. But if we're also raising children, it impacts us as a parent. We might have a lot less patience. We might not have as much time with them. We might find ourselves feeling a lot of what's called anticipatory grief. Our person hasn't died yet, but we know we're on that road, and we might see them suffering or fading away. And that impacts our heart, because this is a person we care about on some level. And, it's hard for us. And then parents who are in the throes of grief, it's hard to show up as a parent with joy and excitement with your kids sometimes. And so that has an impact on our children. And they're in grief too. So we have to look at the whole family system and how that all works. And that's what I'm trying to put out there in the world, is just a little notice. Hey, let's look at this.
Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. And again, I could just talk with you for the next 24 hours.
Well, we'll do it again sometime. Thank you so much.
If you can share where people can find you, that would be great.
Yeah. So my website is pretty easy. It's ChristyYates.com, except for the fact that you could probably spell Christy 500 ways in it. So it's ChristyYates.com, ChristyYates.com. So you can find me there, and it'll talk about the different resources I have to offer. And you can find my book there. And on YouTube, like I said, it's youtube.com/@ChristyYates.com. So I'll send that to you, and you can put those in your links.
Of course, I will share with everybody your contact information, and go ahead and find Christy. She's amazing. She knows so much about everything, about self-care, about being in the sandwich generation, about how to prioritize. And I love that you create a holistic method for everybody, because I don't think we're individuals, like we function as a society. So addressing everybody in the system, I believe it should be the only way of going through this era in our lives.
We are a village, and we need to get back to using it. Yeah.
For some reason, we forgot about being a village and being part of a community. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're really happy to have you here, and see you next week.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.